We live in an interconnected world, linked with family and friends, doing business in ways never possible before. Connectedness strengthens our communities and our nation, but comes with responsibility to protect against the threats that seek to undermine our way of life. We are the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. We are CISA, defending against the threats of today and securing against the risks of tomorrow in five critical areas that span the threat landscape. Technology is always evolving. We work to reduce the risks of supply chain compromises in cyber and 5G to keep our nation secure. Our democratic process defines us as a nation. We supported the most secure election in U.S. history in 2020, assisting state and local officials and private sector organizations, ensuring the safety of your community. We identify, develop, and implement innovative measures that mitigate risks to soft targets in crowded places. Keeping our federal network secure, we help deploy robust capabilities to protect federal systems, recognizing continuous improvement is required to combat evolving threats. And reducing risk to critical infrastructure. We work with partners to protect it by strengthening the security of industrial control systems. We cannot do it alone. Our collaboration and connection, our resources and tools help our partners strengthen their own cyber communications and physical security. Building this culture matters because teamwork is how we achieve the secure and resilient infrastructure that makes us all safer. With your help, together, we can defend today, secure tomorrow.
All right. Hey, Robert,
Yes.
can you go ahead and push through the slide presentation?
You can't
Next
see
slide,
it?
please. No, I couldn't see the video either. Let's,
Oh. I am, let me,
let's
am I
see
not
if we're,
sharing?
Ashley, can you come online?
I'm here.
Were you able to see the video, Ashley?
I was not, but I did hear it. I can see
Okay,
your.
all right. We'll just spend a little bit more time on the slides. Okay, I apologize for that, folks. We're jumping systems, and Robert's the most technically savvy of us, so if he couldn't get it up, we would definitely be doomed with Chris and I. But first of all, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day. We're going to run you through a few slides here, and what we'll make up for that video. It's pretty cool seeing dams and stuff like that. Kind of brings it home to what we do. But what we do, like the slide says, is our job is to partner, and you're going to see this acronym, FSLTT, and that stands for Federal, State, Local, Territorial, Tribal, and Private Partners. And that is to help defend against those threats, and we'll talk about those in a further slide, and to collaborate with those partners to ensure that they identify and they know what's a risk to them, and that we can aid them in providing resources and tools to help build their capacity. So how we do it, again, partnership development. We do a lot of information sharing, data sharing, whether it be on the classified side or just open source. It could be through ISACs. It could be just through meetings and fusion centers. And then we work on capacity building. You're going to hear me talk about training later on in the slide, along with the other two gentlemen. Training is by far the best buy down and the cheapest way of mitigating risk, as you all know. We're going to talk about, well, we do incident management. We're not going to recreate networks, but we can definitely help identify cascading events and potential landmines that might be out there given critical infrastructure susceptibility from a threat. We'll look at risk assessments and analysis, and that's probably where our bread and butter is, at least for the advisors. And the coordinator you're going to see is emergency communications, and that's Chris's bread and butter is coordinate that emergency communications, making sure everybody's on the same level and helping to facilitate betterment, improvement, or just information sharing in that sector. We do have one area in network defense. So CISA is the executive lead when it comes to defending the federal network. And Robert will touch on that a little bit. Next slide, please. All right. So when we talk about critical infrastructure, what in the heck are we talking about? So I refer to it, and this is the textbook definition of it, those assets and systems and networks that are so vital to the nation and to a region. And I have to amplify that, to a region, because a lot of people discount themselves on whether they have critical infrastructure or not. That the incapacitation, destruction of it is just, it's detrimental, and you're going to feel it. It could be a hospital. You might not have a trauma level 1 hospital, but you might be the only urgent care hospital in a long bit away, long ways. And you might have a trauma level 2 nearby. Is it urgent care hospital critical infrastructure? Well, in that situation, I would say it is. It's absolutely critical to the safety and well-being of that populace. So there are 16 sectors to critical infrastructure, and they're specifically listed up there. So CISA came along in 2018 under the Trump administration. It was made its own independent agency, and that was done after years of practice of cyber and infrastructure protection being leveraged to the community through different directorates and offices within DHS. But not until 2018 did it become its own independent agency, which made it number 23 within DHS. And you can see they put us quickly to work. Of the 16 different sectors out there, you'll see where DHS leads on this graphic are shown, but then you can see where CISA has lead on those as the federal. Now, this doesn't preclude us from going to like finance. For instance, I work closely, and so does Robert, with the Federal Reserve, both in St. Louis and Kansas City. And even though the Treasury is the federal executive lead on that one, we definitely help out. Same with food and ag, and we're quite busy with water and wastewater also. So we get to float around, again, federal, state, local, territorial, tribal, and private partners. And one thing that needs to be taken into mind, that yes, we are the federal lead for critical infrastructure outreach, but about 80+% of critical infrastructure identified in the US is privately owned. It's not owned by any type of government. Next slide, please. A little bit of a lag. All right, there we go. Had to bounce off a couple satellites and come back down to Earth. So when we talk about threats, you hear cyber all the time. You hear, terror all the time. But it's more than that. And we look at the whole array. We're looking at the comprehensive threat surface to our critical infrastructure, and that is the acts of terrorism. You hear cyber, but extreme weather comes into play, and I think that's pretty important with SEMA. And I can use an example of that with flooding and water treatment plants and facilities. But also the pandemic, and I promise you the slide existed well before COVID-19. And then the accidents and or technical failures or malfunction of equipment that causes catastrophic downfall. But these are the threats that we look at as an agency and that we try to mitigate. And you're going to hear Robert and I and Chris say something over and over and over. We try to do things all left of boom, left of that incident happening. So our involvement in having to be proactive is where that takes place, trying to get in front of that incident. Next slide, Robert.
Tommy, I'm going to take it from here on the cyber threats, but if you could let me know when you can see the
You got it.
Okay. So I'm going to talk a few minutes about
Okay.
the cyber threats facing us today, and then I'm going to talk briefly about our shields up. What's that, Tommy?
Your slide's up.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to talk about the cyber threats, talk about our Shields Up program, and then some of the cyber services that we have to offer. Now, one thing I would like to mention and make aware so everybody understands, everything that Chris, Tommy, and I talk about today that CISA can offer you is at no cost to your organization. I don't like to use the word free because it is already paid for by taxpayer dollars. So it's already paid for. So these are services that you should take advantage of. But starting off with the cyber threat landscape, we're still seeing that email phishing attacks are still in the #1 spot. It's contributing about 92% of all attacks. Now, if you look at the recent FBI Internet Crime Report for 2021, they kind of compiled the results for the last 5 years from 2017 to 2021. And when you look at the phishing attacks, that increased in a 5-year period over 1,000%, which then lead into a good portion of those phishing attacks lead into ransomware. But we're also seeing loss or theft of equipment, insider threats, and then attacks against connected devices. Really the top 5 prevalent cyber threats that you're facing today. But on the right-hand side, there's one bullet point I really want to bring to your attention, and it's that last bullet point. It's, experiencing a data breach or cyber event, right? I would imagine that a lot of you have experienced a compromise of your personal information, or have experienced a event or a cyber breach in some form or fashion. So statistics show that there's a 1 in 4 chance that you're going to experience it if you have it. Tommy, let me know when you see the next slide.
It's good.
All right. So I'm going to spend a few minutes about our Shields Up program. This is a fairly new program that CISA created last spring. And it was more of an informative campaign. And it was created at the beginning of the Ukraine war. And we started seeing a lot of cyber activity increasing. And we wanted to raise the awareness of all organizations in the United States that we're seeing this increase, and organizations should be prepared. Within this program, we were encouraging all organizations that, hey, you should already have multi-factor authentication already implemented. But if you haven't, make sure that you get it on your remote access connections and your provisioned accounts, right? Other things on this program that we are encouraging all organizations to do was to make sure that you're patching your environments. And I'm going to get into more on that in just a minute. But also test your backups, right? Just don't do your backups. Make sure that those backups are offline and you're testing them on a regular basis. Also, if you're running an industrial control system, whether it's a wastewater treatment facility or a associated with the electric grid or hospital, those organizations that have industrial control systems, make sure that you're testing those manual controls of those environments. Let me know when you can see the next slide.
It's good.
Okay. So like I said, this is probably one of the best programs that I've ever seen the government create and then manage. Since the inception of the Shields Up program, we've added a lot of tools and services to this. And I'm going to be talking more about the cyber hygiene in just a minute. But I want to really talk about the second bullet point, the known exploitable vulnerabilities catalog. And what that means is CISA went back, and we've gone back decades, and we looked at every vulnerability that we've known about. And if we've seen a threat actor utilizing that vulnerability to get their foot into your networks, we move that vulnerability over to this catalog. So why is this important, right? We all know that a lot of organizations can't patch their environments completely within a decent time frame. So there's typically always a lag. So we're encouraging you to go out and you can download this KEV catalog from our website. And we're asking that you at least verify that none of the vulnerabilities identified in the catalog exist within your internal networks. But we've taken it one step farther, right? If you sign up for our cyber hygiene scanning services, which is that top bullet point, we are going to automatically map the scan data of that, and we're going to map it against this KEV catalog for you. And if we see any exposures or vulnerabilities with those items in this catalog, we're not going to wait for a weekly report. We're going to immediately pick up the phone and we're going to contact your organizations with the point of contact that we have to immediately let them know that this is what we're seeing and you need to mitigate this like right now. You either can shut the server down, disable that port, block the port, or patch the environment, right? So, and I've had to do that with a number of stakeholders within our region this year, right? That is a fantastic advantage and benefit that you can get from signing up with the cyber hygiene services. And I'm going to be talking more about that in just a minute. We also have a bad practice catalog that we maintain, just like the name sounds. It's a catalog of everything that you should not be doing in your network, whether, keeping default passwords set, or putting no passwords or weak passwords, or using end-of-life equipment. Then we also added, get your stuff off search. And we wanted to raise the awareness that a lot of organizations don't know about sites such as Shodan. Shodan spelled Shodan. And Shodan's very like a Google. This organization has bots that just basically scan the entire internet. And when it connects to an asset, it catalogs what that asset is, the IP address, who the organization that owns it, what the location, geolocation of that asset is. It identifies what type of asset it is, whether it's a database server, mail server, file server, firewall, router, a CCTV camera, a home internet system, you name it. Then it also registers what are the open ports on it, and then it looks for default passwords and or no passwords. So when users log into Shodan, they can basically do a query against their repository that says, give me a list of all CCTV cameras that Shodan knows about that has a default password or no password set. And Shodan will happily comply. It will build you a list. All that user has to do is click on that, one of those lists are assets, and they now have a live feed into your organization. Why is this important? All right. We want you to be aware that sites like this exist that can provide a wealth of information about your organization without even having to touch your environment. We want you to be aware of this. You can't mitigate everything, but we encourage you to go out and log into Shodan, do searches against your organization, see what your vulnerabilities are, what your exposures are, and try to mitigate as much as possible. And then we also added free tools and service catalog. And CISA does not endorse any particular product or vendor, but what we wanted to do is for those stakeholders that really don't have an IT department or very few resources for IT, we wanted to provide a catalog for those organizations that if they're interested to learn more about, let's say, log analysis or what scanning tools are available, they could quickly go to see what the products and vendors are in that market. Let me know when you can see the next slide.
It's good.
Okay. So our cyber services, I'm going to kind of be breaking up into two parts. There's the services that we can offer through our vulnerability management team. And we briefly talked about the top bullet point, the cyber hygiene scanning. What this is it is a weekly scan of your internet facing systems. And we're looking for weaknesses and vulnerabilities, risky services, risky ports. And what we're going to do is we're going to give you a very detailed report at the end of every month, right? So when you sign up for this isn't a one-time scan. This is going to occur on a weekly basis until you tell us to stop. But you're going to get that detailed report. And the only thing that we're asking for is that you try to mitigate those vulnerabilities as quickly as possible. Now, I also indicated that we're going to take it one step farther. We take that scan data that we do on a weekly basis, and we're going to map it against that KEV catalog for you, right? And if we see a really high critical vulnerability based on that vulnerability that would be identified in the KEV catalog, we're going to immediately contact you by phone. We're not going to wait for that weekly report. And then we also have web application scanning. This is very similar to the cyber hygiene scanning or the vulnerability scanning, but this is a monthly scan of your web applications, right? Whether it's your website or your web server, your VPN SSL solution, any web applications that you have that are externally facing. And we're looking for weaknesses, misconfigurations, vulnerabilities such as cross-site scripting, SQL injection, directory transversal, and things like that. And again, you're going to get a monthly report of our findings. And again, the only thing that we ask is that you try to mitigate those vulnerabilities in a timely fashion. The other thing I want to point out on this is at the very top, you see this is tiered VM services. And there's a lot of additional services that our vulnerability management team offers, such as remote pen testing, phishing campaign assessments, vulnerability risk assessments, validated architectural design reviews, etc. But we're kind of going back to a more of a tiered service. So right out of the gate, we can offer you these two services, the cyber hygiene and the web application scanning. And then for tier 2, later on, we can come in and offer you the remote pen testing or the vulnerability risk assessments, things like that. Part of our cyber services, let me know when you see the next slide.
We see it.
Okay. So part of the services, and this is something that I, as a CSA, a cybersecurity advisor, can help your organization with. We offer a number of cyber assessments that really look at different levels of your organization, right? Our first one's called the Cyber Resiliency Review, CRR. This is really a top-down approach that looks at your entire organization on how it supports your critical service. We're looking at all aspects of your organization. And then we have external dependency management assessment that really just focuses on how does your organization establish relationships with third parties or vendors, and then how do you maintain that relationship every year, and then what happens if something bad happens, right? The vendor goes out of business. What do you do to keep your critical service running? And then we have a cyber infrastructure survey, which is more IT centric. So again, these three assessments are looking at different levels of your organization to give you a different insight on how your cyber program is performing. And the goal is it helps identify those gaps and weaknesses, right? And then at the very bottom, we have what's called a cybersecurity evaluation tool, CISA tool. This is a standalone application that you can download from our website, and you can perform your own assessments internally. Um, or you can ask me to come out and help facilitate that as well. We have a number of assessments that you can use for your cyber program. Okay, and I'm going to pass it back over to Tommy.
I have the slow computer of the group. It's not the operator, I promise. I still haven't seen the slide come up. There we go. So the presentation we're given is really a three-part. So Robert kind of hit on the first part, which is cyber. I'm going to touch on the physical side that the Protective Security Advisor addresses. I mean, we work collectively amongst all three of us, but this is more my discipline. So let's talk about threats a bit. So I'm going to show you that diagram that showed you the all hazard threats that we look at, but one specific to the Missouri Midwestern areas, we know floods, tornadoes, and earthquakes. So just take a second here, and I'll use this as a stepping stone to kind of share how we can assist. So for instance, floods. With the resources that we have, I can easily map out, once we have the data, where all critical infrastructure is along flood zones. And that's something we're working right now. And then the same goes with earthquakes. I know the state's got a very good grip on that with liquefaction of the ground and soil, but we're looking at those critical infrastructures that are there and the cascading impacts they might have to society should that happen. Other threats that we look at are insider threat. I mean, this is really a topic that's not new to anybody. With the news and social media, we see this all the time. But the physical attacks and cyber access to systems and being able to shut them down, and Robert was able to talk about that. If you look to the right side, I'm not making these up. There's three physical attacks I just put on there that were headline news at one point, and that was damaging power transformers, somebody flying a drone with copper cables off of it, trying to shunt out and short out power substations. And who can forget the Nashville attack on Christmas a few years ago? I mean, that's the reality of the world we live in today. And these come from, sometimes they're lone wolf actors. They could be insider threat. For instance, the Nashville AT&T building attacker was an insider threat. But you could have those lone wolf attacks too, those shooters, those bombers, and those saboteurs. Um, you know, Domestic violent extremists is on the rise. We see a lot of racially motivated extremists too, and you'll see that it does bleed into civil injustice, but it bleeds across the entire slide here in all these sub areas. But what we see with domestic violent extremists are use of firearms, explosive devices, and household tools. Just yesterday alone, I was opening up our tripwire message. It's law enforcement sensitive, and we had two IEDs found in the U.S. and then two improvised incendiary devices were used against people, one in New York and one in Washington State. And the scary part is the two IED devices, improvised explosive devices, one was found at a school. Now, you won't see this on the headline news, but I can assure you every day something comes across our tripwires stating that an IED or an improvised incendiary device was used. So it's kind of awakening for us. And then you have the state actors. I know in the United States we think that everything's internal, but there are foreign countries that that try to collect on us, right? And they go after our supply chain, whether it be through malware or through intelligence, right? So they are targeting us. With regards to those threats out there, I could talk about active assailants all day. There's too many, though. I mean, we're all familiar with them, and what they use. They've went to the cheapest form, right? And it's now vehicles. So as the holidays come around, this is where the Protective Security Advisor works with local municipalities and event sponsors to ensure that planning is put in place to make sure people aren't being run over by vehicles. Whether it's celebration at Union Station, the Veiled Prophet Fair, or Fair St. Louis, or a St. Patrick's Day marathon, either in St. Louis, Kansas City, or other parts of Missouri. When it comes to bombing of soft targets, it could be ideological, it could be random, or it could be an event. And I just share these with you because if you don't think it can't happen to you or can't involve you, guess again. And I'm going to use a little war story. Ideologically, Unabomber, what effect did it have? Well, as mentioned earlier, we have some veterans on here. I was an Air Force veteran. And when I was at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, I had to work with the FBI because Ted Skaczynski had contact with some of my partners, my counterparts in airmen. And it was just through either association at the same location at the same time because of a snowstorm, but that touched me. The random ones, at Austin bombing, I was working with Director SAC Chris Combs, where the gentleman was out there. I wouldn't call him gentleman, but a perpetrator was out there, nefarious actor was out there bombing randomly people. And you saw this on the news when he dropped off a bomb at the FedEx location, and it went out throughout Austin, and we reacted on that. And then Dan Linsky, a friend of mine from one of the schools I went to, was running the Boston Marathon, and spoke to him the day of, and then that event took place. And then it's just those Kevin Bacon type scenarios, right? But they can happen to any one of us, and I just use that as an example. And then lastly, with the civil unrest, we saw what happened over the last year, with the tensions of COVID-19 and just political motivations or social injustice causes. Yeah, you see that political unrest, whether it be in the plaza in St. Louis plaza in Kansas City or in downtown St. Louis or any other metropolitan area. So it is a reality that we face. So next slide, please. So what can we do to address these? So if you're critical infrastructure stakeholder or owner or facility owner, and you have concerns of these, and you've done your own self-assessment to say, hey, listen, we need some follow-on assistance. This is some of the free services we do offer. So with regards to physical protection and resiliency, I can do something as simple as a security walkthrough assessment, where I'm walking through and identifying what I see as best practices or areas of interest that you might want to address that maybe you bypassed, or maybe someone's not understanding that the seriousness of it within your organization, and bringing an outsider in might assist a little bit. It's just a good check, a health check. I compare these to going to the general practitioner. I'm going to go in there and tell you what is generally going on, and then I'll get you some specialist support. We do security assessments at first entry, and this is the first written document you're going to get. And this will be security focused only. With the security walkthrough assessment, I'm going to print out like a checklist sheet, and they're going to give it to the stakeholder to keep. With all of these, the security walkthrough assessment, the security assessment at first entry, and the infrastructure survey tool, this is between myself and the person who signed the protected critical infrastructure information express statement, which safeguards all your information that's divulged when it's in my hands. So it protects it from sunshine law, it protects it from FOIA and subpoena. All right, and then we also do multi-asset and system assessments, and these are predominantly for municipalities. We'll go in there and look at it could be something like their power grid, or it could be their water treatment systems for that municipality, and then provide an overall understanding of its susceptibility, vulnerability, or its strength. But these again are all free at no cost. Now, what I would like to bring up for the infrastructure survey tool advanced assessment, Robert has assessments like this on the cyber side, but the neat thing about this is it will identify both the protective level and the resiliency level of that infrastructure, and it will compare it against all of the infrastructure data that we have. That's it's all masked. It's not known as far as who the owners are, but it'll tell us where you fall in that sector. So earlier on in the slide presentation, we showed a sheet with sectors on it. So for instance, health and human services sector health and emergency services sector. If it's say like a hospital that I do an assessment on, if I do an assessment of a trauma level 2 hospital, I'll put, bed size in there. I'll do some narrative description of it. It's going to compare my findings and the information captured from the stakeholder against all the other trauma level 2 hospitals in the nation. And then it's going to show where you fall in comparison to them in areas that you can increase your resiliency or protection with. And I'll use that as a tool to provide more refined advice. Next slide, please. I think my computer's a little slower. If you guys are up, I can jump. There we go. So we do a lot of protective and resiliency outreach and support. And I stated earlier on in this that the most efficient, effective way and cost-effective way of buying down risk is through training and exercising. And that is one tool that we have in our rucksack. We can do this. Robert, Chris, and I are your belly button for those resources that are held in reserve in DC. Now, we can provide drills and exercises at the local level also. So Robert, myself, or Chris can provide drills or exercises. Our regional headquarters in Kansas City can provide those, or we can go all the way up to DC if it's going to be a large one. And we did one for Kansas City. We did a Kansas City response exercise on the 2nd of August, and 22 members of the headquarters team set it all up for the city and kept it very easy for them. We do a lot of special event security planning. On that original slide with the sectors on it, it showed CISA was the lead for that. Soft targets, crowded spaces, and this is probably my this is the one that gets me the most because right now, when you see things like the Las Vegas shooting, you see some of these other atrocities that take place. This is something where we can really get far left of that. We can mitigate a lot of the weak areas, but we will proactively get involved with anything if a stakeholder requests. I've assisted with things such as we're doing the NFL draft right now for Kansas City. I have a meeting this evening with the NFL. But Celebration Union Station down to a mushroom festival, we can assist with that. Just kind of give an over-the-shoulder look and then provide resources to help make that plan a little bit more resilient. Products that we offer. So as you reach out to us as advisors, we can also provide products. And these are some of those resources I mentioned earlier that our headquarters can provide us. One, it's going to be the protective measures and best practices, but we can also provide intelligence. We can do GIS mapping and surveys. We can do IVP, picture Google Earth, but inside a facility. And it's really beneficial for large facilities that have a lot of people walk through them, whether it be a courthouse or a mall or a hospital. We can go in there and do video caption of it. That video caption is used by you for whatever needs you have, whether it be for future planning, whether it be for training, site familiarization, or providing it to emergency responders so that they have a good understanding of your layout of your facility. And then lastly, we also do blast assessments. And these we only do about 2 a year. They're quite complex and they're hard to come by. We have a small team up in DC that does this, and they do a very good job to give you an understanding of that blast threat and that blast impact to your facility. We also have campaigns, Operation Flashpoint. We are the lead federal entity right now with doing election security and election outreach. And then, as I mentioned earlier, securing public gatherings. And lastly, incident response. We can do it, and we most definitely can. We're going to go in there, but we're not like our brothers and sisters in DOJ with the FBI or FEMA. We're not coming in with a big checkbook, and we're not coming in with a bunch of investigators and resources. We're going to come in there with information that might be very relevant and important to the decision making being conducted by whether it be an EOC or at the state or a local level. And I used the example early on about flooding and the impacts it might have on water treatment facilities, and then cascading impact it might have on further infrastructure. All right, next slide. So how do we do this? So Robert is like 2 people in the entire state, or in the region, working the state with CISA. Chris is 1 person within the entire region. And then I am a one of the states. So there's about 97 field protective security advisors. So how do we do this? How do we get this information out? How do we address the stakeholders' needs? And it's simple. It's a one-to-many approach. And what we do is, and I'll use a quick example. Say like there's a growing concern of schools and in school security in the state. that it would be impossible for me to go to every school, during the off-school season and run active shooter drills. I have the information on it and I'm fully certified to do it. But what I can do is I can set up a workshop using either a organization to facilitate that, whether it be SEMA, whether it be highway patrol, whether it be a city, and then I can bring those resources to a group gathering. And we try to do it, what we call a T3, train the trainer, right? A one-to-many. We want to teach people to fish. But the way we would do that is through workshops, independent study courses that are all free and online, and then webinars. And we can put requests in. We can build these. We can adapt them to the need of the state or the municipality or the sector that fills a need. I'll use an example for sectors. The Tulsa shooting a couple months ago in the emergency room of the Tulsa hospital got the Missouri Hospital Association and everybody else in the medical profession concerned, and they had to do a relook on their training. And through that, we've been able to request webinars from our headquarters to train this stuff to hospitals in the hospital sector, and it's able to reach a larger mass. So this is the approach that we try to take at CISA. All right, next slide, please.
Oh, this is me.
All right.
So,
Chris.
can
You're up,
everybody hear
buddy.
me okay? Thanks, man. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, Chris, we can.
Super,
Okay.
super. So thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Ashley, for the time today. Really, really appreciate it. We'll kind of branch off now and go into emergency communications. And emergency communications is one of those things that, you know, metaphorically speaking, I kind of relate it to this Rubik's Cube that has all these things that are built into it, radio, data, analog, digital, P25, FirstNet, you know, LTE type of roaming, VPNs, apps, whatever it is you want to put on that Rubik's Cube. And your job when you're trying to figure out how interoperability works is to try to solve the Rubik's Cube so that all the same colors are on one side. Well, the interesting thing with interoperability is that the technology is evolving so rapidly. And as you try to piece all these things together, it's almost like those little tiles are changing colors on you as you work to solve the interoperability thing. And that's one of those reasons why interoperability is an evolving journey and a process. It's not necessarily a destination. It's always changing. The things that we work directly with stakeholders on through CISA and the emergency communications coordinators is to help the SWIC. In case of you all, your statewide interoperability coordinator is Roger Strope. He just started recently. I've known him for about 5 years, and he is, you know, to go off on a bit of a tangent here really quick, Roger's one of the most capable SWICs I've ever met. I've known him for about 5 years. He's very easygoing and very pragmatic. And I think if you haven't had a chance to meet Roger yet, I think you all should write his name down and reach out to him because he is a really, really, really good SWIC, and he's only going to get better over time as well. So I would definitely reach out to him. One of the things we work with the jurisdictions on and along with the SWIC is to help them figure out A, what they're using, B, how they're using it, and C, how we can take those different methods and technologies that they've acquired over time and really bring them together to enhance their overall collective capabilities. We also work with new technology as it comes out through emergency communications. You may think of radio, text, email, various messaging platforms, video. That adds complexity, but at the same time within CISA, we have people looking at those technologies as they're coming out so that we can work with stakeholders so that as those technologies get incorporated into their daily operations pictures, we can help them effectively manage them. As an example, you may have heard all this stuff about 5G, video, CAD to CAD. Within CISA, we have people that are working on that stuff every single day, and they're working on those processes and various layers to develop a cohesive strategy to help everybody who's the end stakeholder have success with those technologies as they get incorporated into everybody else's operating pictures. We also work with various vendors on how their technology works and how we can help facilitate interoperability, just even when it comes to things like radio. You may look at radio brand A, radio brand B, and radio brand C. They're all standards compliant, but they may do some things all a little bit differently. And a piece of our puzzle is to work directly with them through several of the federal CISA groups to help them bring things back together and make sure that interoperable communications is possible. As an example, your statewide radio network, Moslin, that will likely work with almost any branded P25 radio as long as it's got the proper feature set. Each manufacturer will label those feature sets slightly differently, and we can help kind of untangle some of that confusion as well. With the emergency communications coordinators especially, we can work with different agencies to the left of boom, but then also if something bad happens, we can kind of be brought in for right of boom activities as well. As an example, you've probably heard about Hurricane Fiona affected Puerto Rico. One of our ECCs is out there right now working directly with FEMA to help bring back some of those communications mediums and platforms that are necessary for operations to continue. So we can also bring in lessons learned from other incidents, from other agencies, and help you plan for something that may be similar as well. Now, we don't necessarily get hurricanes here in Iowa, but or in Missouri, sorry. I'm from Iowa, force of habit. We get tornadoes, we get high wind events, heavy rains, flooding, hailstorms, big winter storms, ice storms, you name it. We get an entire mix of it. So every incident is different, and we can bring lessons learned from those other incidents across the country to you through various technical assistance programs as well. On the next slide, we've got some things that we can kind of cover as well with an actual event. So if we could go to the next one, I'll cover the August 2020 derecho. This is something that I was directly involved with from start to finish. August 10th, 2020 will be a day that kind of lives on forever in my mind, but it really hammered home about how emergency communications have to work and how sometimes you have to bring them back online to get them working. So a quick event summary, we had widespread 80+ mile per hour winds across a large part of the state with large areas of embedded 110 to 140 mile per hour winds. So essentially we had a really strong hurricane roll right through Iowa. It left us with approximately 1/3 of the state without power. For those that want to know the numbers, it was right around 515 to 520,000 power paying customers that did not have power for at least 16 hours. In some parts of the state, that power outage lasted anywhere from a week to 2 weeks. Over the course of the event, we had numerous commercial broadband systems go down because of the event, either during because of damage to sites and facilities, or after because there were some dependencies that they quite didn't have mapped out and understood or were not necessarily planned for. In the case of public safety, though, with the proper planning that Iowa was able to leverage through CISA services and various best practices that were found out throughout the nation, we are able to work collectively to ensure that public safety systems, interoperability, 911, what have you, they worked all the way through the event, and there were no outages to any state assets. We had to deploy out to local counties to help them stand some operations back up, but we were able to leverage those public safety systems that were built in with resiliencies to help them pick up the pieces and continue on and operate. So along with that, people and policies, we had to put those in place as well. A lot of those best practices were borrowed from other states. And in reality, this August 2020 derecho really hammers home the idea that it takes people, processes, and technology to be successful when it comes to interoperability. You can kind of get by with maybe having one of the three or two of the three, but if you really want to have that success during that big event, you really want to bring all three of those together, because success lives where all three of those things intersect. So with that being said, too, with those best practices, it kind of comes down to daily operations as well from a personnel side. Really quickly, a side story. After living through this event and seeing how important it is to have backups and dependencies and resiliencies and getting set up for this meeting, I had a technology problem. I'm on the road today, I'm traveling, I'm meeting with a couple of other stakeholders after this, so I'm working remotely today. And one of my primary devices that I use for internet did not have enough bandwidth to support the video feed of this meeting and the audio concurrently. So through some backups and checking, I was able to figure out a way to use one device for the video feed for this meeting, one device for the audio, and then use another device to maintain contact with home base and there's diversity in carriers built in with those devices. Again, won't say which ones, but I'm using each different device for a different thing right now because along with interoperability to work and understanding the technology, you kind of have to get familiar with what is the best tool to use for which particular problem. So, and Ashley said, yes, if you were on the call earlier, you heard this happen. As Murphy's Law would have it, the communications guy had a communications problem that had to be solved right out of the gate today. So this is basically the fourth Monday of the week. So, Robert, if you could go on to the next slide. Along with this whole interoperability puzzle, it takes a lot of help to get things going. CISA offers various programs to help out with that. You heard me talk about some of those groups before that work with manufacturers and things like that to make sure the technology is supportive of public safety operations. But we also have something called the Interoperable Communications Technical Assistance Program. This includes courses for things like your communications unit leader, communications technicians that would go out during an all-hazard event. If you're running a communications center, we also offer something that's kind of similar to TERT with Incident Tactical Dispatcher. IMTD takes it a little bit further in the sense that it teaches your dispatchers how to operate in some sort of austere environment. Now, in this case, it may just be, you know, say your communications dispatch center is having some maintenance done and you have to dispatch out of an alternative facility for a short amount of time. Or it could be kind of the worst case scenario, they're operating out of a trailer or a truck somewhere because something bad has happened. We offer those types of courses along with others. We offer various encryption planning technical assistance courses as well. Those are designed to help the state and its partners really build in and plan long-term to make sure that as you roll through the process of figuring out what encryption looks like for you long-term, that it works for everybody and interoperability continues to be available. We also offer physical and cyber assessments of networks. We can do that through two lanes. We can do that through someone like Tommy or Robert, and we'll be able to offer that as well from a purely communications side of it. We also offer some things like priority telecommunication services, GETS, WPS, and TSP, which involves protecting your lines so that they stay up during an event. And then those things are available to agencies as well at no cost and can really help out during an event. As an example, with the hurricane that just rolled through Puerto Rico, we had an issue where definitely cellular lines were down, and GETS and WPS really helped out with ensuring that people could continue to make phone calls before, during, and after the event. And in many cases with WPS, the success rate for making mobile calls when infrastructure was down was in excess of 97%, which is exceptional. So with that being said, given that I am mobile today, can you all still hear me?
Chris,
Super,
yes, we
Ashley,
can.
thank you. Awesome, awesome. Just double checking because with cellular networks, you never know how your devices are going to behave. So if we can go on to the next slide. All right. So one last thing I'll talk about too is that communications is about connections. Through your SWIC, which is, again, is Roger Strope, and if you haven't reached out to him yet, I highly encourage you to do that. There's a group called the National Council of Statewide Interoperability Coordinators. This group operates underneath a charter from CISA, and basically, if you could imagine a group of all the SWICs from all 50 states and 6 territories getting together to solve problems, this is what that group does. They are very operationally focused, and they will bring best practices that they've learned from their own states to the board so that everybody else can benefit from them. And then in addition to that, we also have the ability to work on special projects such as training, exercises, technology, policy, and things of the sort. This is another reason why I would really encourage you to reach out to Roger, because through Roger, you can take things that are popping up in Missouri and make them a national initiative depending on what it is. And Roger's already involved in several of those groups, and he brings a lot to the table, and he's very well respected. Another group that publishes a lot of documents out there is called SAFECOM. This is a group of appointed persons that are always reviewing the current state of communications ecosystem to try to find best practices or even develop guidance documents for state, local, tribal, and territory partners. These documents typically cover everything from 911 to data interoperability to future looks at technologies that are now finding their way into the field like UAS systems. So it's really a comprehensive look at the entire ecosystem. I kind of alluded to this before, but through CISA and the ECCs in general, we can connect you to other SWCs and other key personnel from states to assist in various initiatives that you may encounter and you may want to address within your own state. Really, CISA brings the entire approach to the table to help solve communications. In addition, we also have some best practices available out there for protection of networks and things like that. So, Robert, I believe this is my last slide, but if I could steal the screen for a second just to kind of give people an idea on what we offer collectively through CISA, I'm going to share something called the Interoperable Communications Technical Assistance Program Catalog. So let me know when you guys can see that.
I can see that, but you are totally upside down.
I am. I didn't realize my camera was active before. Yeah, that's all right. Been watching Batman recently. So this catalog has a lot of things in there, and it really covers everything from various technical assistance programs that are aligned towards things like governance. Governance is not one of those things that's often thought as something on the forefront of technology because people like to buy stuff, they like to use stuff, they like to get hands-on things. But with the governance section of these offerings, we can help you develop that statewide plan. We can help you review various things you have in place or may need to further develop, like your communications unit planning and policies associated with that. We can offer assistance on figuring out how to do grant funding for emergency communications. Many of these deliveries can be done in person or they can be done virtually, so it's flexible for your people to attend, as we know that time and travel dollars are very limited right now. We can help you further develop SOPs and standard operating guidelines for planning and development of interoperable events in the future. We can help you develop your field operations guide. Now, Missouri's ahead of the curve a little bit, and Roger was largely involved in this. You guys already have a tactical interoperable communications field guide that you can use to kind of use as a reference for the various events that are out there. We also can bring forth various strategic planning and support for things like broadband, fixed and mobile data site use, 911 and PSAP, LMR cyber awareness webinars, which can then dovetail back into things that Robert and Tommy offer. We also allow for various types of trainings to kind of come into play here. You guys have used a lot of our communications unit exercises, TAs, over the last couple of years with Central States that just wrapped up last week, and a functional exercise in Cape Girardeau that wrapped up a few weeks ago. Both of those were successes, and that's another situation where CISA will provide the people and the staff to help you guys be successful at no real cost to your agencies aside from just traveling to get to the site of the exercise. We also offer the Communications Unit Leader course. You heard me talk about that before, along with COMT and INTD. One thing that's coming up in the future that we now offer is this thing called ITSL, which is Information Technology Service Unit Leader. This is a situation where if you've had an event happen, you're going to have a lot of people say, I want my data and I want it right now. How are we going to get it? This training course will teach your personnel on how to operate under that type of environment and still get people the data they need in an all hazards environment. And of course, the Incident Tactical Dispatcher, that's one of the more popular courses as well, where it really works with the dispatch staff to get them familiar with how to operate in various types of austere environments. So this catalog has more offerings than that. There is a ton of stuff in here that really is designed to help your state progress collectively throughout their interoperable journey as they work to really, really enhance their capabilities. So with that being said, Robert, I'm going to make you present again and turn off my camera so it doesn't look like I'm hanging from the ceiling, and I'm going to pass it back to you, sir.
Thanks, Chris. Tommy, did you want to go over our CISA.gov website?
Yeah, if you could navigate through it.
Sure, I'll navigate.
I can talk the infrastructure. So for everybody on here, you know, the term advisor comes up all the time, and I use that because that's all we are. We're just advisors. We're just trying to share what we find out there, and we try to share across the government to the stakeholder. One of the things in my previous life or career that you just come to realize is you don't know what you don't know. So just please lean on us if there's something out there you're uncertain of. But our website can offer a lot of things on here. So this is our website, right? Pretty simple, www.cisa.gov. But you know, Robert spoke about cyber, and then you could click on the buttons up top and go directly to all those services that we offer and contact information if you need it. So, hey, Robert, you can hit on any one of the top icons. I'm
Already did.
assuming everybody can see this live. Okay, so yeah, I'm having a long lag here. I don't know what's going on. I tell you what, Robert, if you can take over narrating while you go
Sure.
through that, because I'm in the dark right now.
So on the cybersecurity side, at the very top of the web page, if you click on that, in the midsection really contains all our major categories for cybersecurity. You know, we have the CISA Insights, we have the Cyber Resource Hub, and I'll backtrack to that here in just a second. But we also have that Shields Up that yeah, we kind of talked about in today's presentation. So when you click on it, you know, you can go out here and get all the information about what's on the Shields Up program. And keep in mind that, you know, we're constantly updating this on a daily basis. You know, new vulnerabilities are constantly being added to the KEV catalog. And again, you can come out to this website and you can download that KEV catalog. And again, just verify that you don't have any of those vulnerabilities in that KEV catalog within your environments. Um, Going to the resource hub, this is really the main part of our cyber services. It really covers all the cyber services and it gives you a good background on each one. So like on the vulnerability scanning, if you click on that, you can click on the vulnerabilities portion and it's going to take you out. Actually, it's going to bring up a PDF. You know, it's going to bring up that vulnerability fact sheet. You know, it's going to give you everything that we talked about and then some. So there's a lot of good information, a great resource here. We talked about that cyber resiliency review, that one of the cyber assessments that we do. You can come out here, you can learn all about it. But if you don't want CISA to come out and do that assessment, you can actually download that assessment yourself and perform it. You have the external dependency management assessment. You got the CISA tool that we talked about, that standalone application to perform your own assessments. So the Cyber Resource Hub is a great resource for you to go out and take a look at. There's also the Stop Ransomware portion of the website. And, you know, when you go out to the Stop Ransomware, there's a lot of additional resources, you know, just dealing with ransomware. You know, if you go into the resource portion of this, you got the Ransomware 101 guide, which really gives you more than enough information that you'd ever want to know about ransomware. But more importantly, this portion of the website has what's called the ransomware guide. And within this guide, there's two parts to the guide. The first part is really a best practice guides on what you should do to prevent a ransomware from affecting your organization. And then part two is, you know, if you do have a ransomware attack, what should you do? So uh, great resources from a ransomware perspective. And another great resource to have, and Tommy kind of talked a little bit about this, it's called the CTEP package. And CTEP stands for CISA Tabletop Exercise Package. So if you go onto our website, just do a search for CTEP. You can see it right here. And
Hey,
CISA, what we've
Robert,
done is, yeah.
I'm going to pause you and trying to get some of the guys on here to be a little bit more interactive. So, knowing you guys are all emergency managers, what in the emergency management field, what exercise would you like to see? And we'll drill in here and provide something for you. Can you throw something in chat if you have like a tabletop exercise you'd like to do in the future?
And
And the
Tommy,
reason I say this is
Tommy, just to let you know, I can't see the chat when I'm presenting. So,
okay. I'll let you know. And I see Larry asked if we can get a copy of the presentation. Absolutely, Larry. We'll push that to Ashley. But does anybody have a particular exercise that they have in the future or planning on in the future? And we can show you where all the heavy lift is actually done through these scenarios. Well, Robert, why don't we grab one then?
Okay.
Something that's pretty common.
Well,
do like
Tommy,
grab like a okay. So we have some people saying active shooter.
Okay.
So I got Jakin saying active shooter. Can you go to physical security scenarios, please? And the reason I like to highlight this is at some point, like all of us, I had to build these things, when I was younger, and it was a heavy lift. And if I would have had this resource, so here we go to physical, and you want to do active shooter, and there's an outdoor event down here. You can do outdoor events, active shooter. Do you see that, Robert?
Yeah, it should be up, Tommy. Let me know when you get it.
Okay. I'm really laggy today. Okay, so it's up. So what it is, it's pretty much the boilerplate exercise. And Robert, if you can just kind of scan down and scroll down, it'll give everybody an understanding. It is everything from, you can use our symbols if you want, we don't care, but it breaks down the time of the exercise, preparing for the exercise, the measle for the exercise, essentially, if you want to go that route. It talks about threats, and then what you can really do is you can tailor it down by identifying those threats specific, those most likely, most probable threats specific to your event that you're hosting. And then, you just put the location in, and it'll build a scenario out for you. So here's module 1, incident response. And you can play with this all you want. You can change it to Word doc. And then it goes into module 2, and then it goes into the after action.
But
it makes it quite easy if you.
So Tommy, one thing I would like to stress that not only does it give you the scenario or the measle, but it also provides those core critical discussion questions that the facilitator can use to engage the players of the exercise or your coworkers. And these questions are really geared to start the discussion and lead into a guided discussion that gets the players to think about other things that the organization should consider. So these are really effective scenarios.
Yeah, and as you saw from Robert Pannon on here, this is one item that we offer, and there's a whole library of these that our team in DC builds for us. So you can use this on your own, or we could come and help facilitate it, and we can adapt it to your needs. Or if it's a large exercise, and I'll use one as an example, in preparing for the NFL draft in Kansas City, our headquarters was able to take this basic format and really build it out specifically for the participants. They were quite executive level principles, and it was a win-win situation. It's nice. I used to have to build these from scratch in the old days, and it was a very painful, time-consuming task.
And Tommy, I would like to point out that there's a lot of different scenarios. Whether it's cybersecurity scenarios, you already looked at the list of physical scenarios that you can choose from, but you also have the complex coordinated attacks, and then also natural disasters. In addition to those scenarios, you also have a lot of your documents that you would need to conduct your own tabletop exercise within your organization. You can download the facilitator handbook, the users guides, and it even comes with after action templates for you to use afterwards. So really everything that your organization would need to conduct a tabletop exercise is right here on this site. All you got to do is plug in a few pertinent pieces of information about your organization, and you got a resource here that you can run with. Tommy, did you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the physical stuff on the website?
Yeah, so if you go to just hit infrastructure security. All right, so we get more physical with the infrastructure security tab, but our quick links here, these are the ones that are most popular or most used. Organizations will say, hey, listen, I have a security plan, but I don't have an elevated threat security plan, or I don't have a workplace violence security plan. A lot of times they'll say, well, human resources does that, but the security manager doesn't really know what to go to, or doesn't is looking for the baseline, right? The big question we always get are houses of worship, and now K through 12. So if you go to like faith-based organization, house of worship, click on that rascal. It's going to bring up some good resources. You know, obviously there's tabletop exercise packages, but you're going to see our neighborhood partnerships, our information sharing and analysis organization. Can you click on that one, Robert?
The faith-based one?
Now, you know, yeah, just go ahead and faith-based, and where it says information sharing and analysis.
I should be out there.
Okay. All right. And it just talks about where that information's getting shared. It's a sharing organization. There's other, you know, for municipalities, you might have like the Mark or the Star in St. Louis. You might have through your county, whether it be Greene County or any of the larger counties, where they can host online shared information. But yeah, this is our ISAO, and you become a member of this. And it goes both ways, though. You know, you get to share, and you also get to receive. Let's see, if we back out of that, we could go to one of a really good initiative we have going is our school safety and security. And because a lot of faith-based communities have schools in it, a lot of the information in our safety, our school safety and security bleeds over into that. So Robert, if you were to go back and hit school safety and security,
Is
this
that
is under the sector of faith-based.
Oh, it is? Okay.
If you just go back, yeah, just go back one slide to where you were, hit faith-based. And there's going to be a lot of overlap. It branches and sequels if they get very distinct, but you're going to see a lot of overlap. So with faith-based organizations, you might have a mosque or a synagogue or a Christian academy that has academics in the school setup also. That's why we tie these into some of our school safety and security. So it gives you a one-stop shop. And then you can drill into here. You can hit K-12 security guide and companion products, and just hit the plus sign and build it out if you want. And like I've said this several times over, you know, you can hit the guide. They're hyperlinking it. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and this website is a great resource just to kind of play around and dig around in, and it should get you a pretty good understanding. And if you still don't get the answer you need, you call us and we'll get it for you. Is that building out, Robert? Mine's a little slow.
Oh, did you want me to click on anything? I'm at the K-12.
I mean, there's just there's just tools and stuff on there that you can access and actually populate your data into it, and it'll give you a product that provides you. Right.
Tommy, did you want me to open up the K-12?
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
It's a little everything's a little clunky right now.
Yeah.
But what I'd like to do is answer any questions. If y'all have any questions whatsoever, please let us know, and then and we will we'll point you in the right direction or answer as best we can.
Okay, so there were some comments in the chat. Brian said, I work in Callaway County, Mo, and we have a nuclear power plant in our backyard. I know that we have tabletop events frequently, but in my opinion, we can never do these types of events too often.
Okay.
And then Wayland said, phishing tabletop as network attack that takes out our network will leave us vulnerable. Other tabletop to bring awareness to the importance of securing electronic communications and securing network when on remote internet access in the field. So those are two tabletops that he would like to see.
Okay. So when we were asking that question to go delve into this. So Robert, if you want to back out and go to cybersecurity and CTEP, and see if there's a CTEP that addresses that topic.
We have the one on ransomware, and that's a big one that a lot of organizations seem to go to, and that's something that I'm working with the state of Missouri with tabletop exercises for school districts. We are hitting all the school districts in the state, at least in the quadrants, and inviting all the school districts in each area to attend these. That's a really good tabletop exercise plan right there for the ransomware. And if you recall, going back to when I was talking about the threat landscape, what's in that, the top one, the top seat of our cyber attacks is phishing, right? And then phishing, if you look at the stats from 2017 to 2021, you've seen that phishing attacks, increased by over 1,000%. And, you're really seeing a huge increase and a huge jump, between 2019 and 2020, which you could probably alleviate or a kind of point to COVID, where a lot of people started working remote. There's a lot of vulnerabilities, and they took advantage of that. So you see a huge jump in that. But we all know that those phishing emails contribute to the ransomware. Did I answer your question?
So, we got a couple minutes, so we'll just free talk if anybody doesn't have specific questions. And I love telling war stories, right? So when we go out, it's just building that relationship, eating lunch, sitting down, breaking bread, and kind of learning what the stakeholders' concerns might be, and then helping facilitate, a get well plan or something that might foster improvement in that area. I'll share some war stories with you. And this goes to physical security and also cyber, and it bleeds in every organization. So some of the threats out there are always insider threat. I went to one organization, a very professional organization, and had a very, very good system set up. And they spent thousands and thousands of dollars on key control, and a key control system. It was electronic with air fobs and stuff. They had an access control process for anybody who came on to work, whether it be day or night, to where they actually handed over their ID card, whether it be a state driver's license or city identification, to the company, the company's security, and security would then give them those keys, whether it be a digital key or hard key. And it was a really robust process, and they spent all this time and money in it. But as I started asking questions on the assessment, I asked human resources, who is working differently from security, hey, what do you do for background checks? How frequently do you do them? And what do you do? Do you do a national criminal data background check, as we suggest? And the human resources representative had been there for a little bit, and she replied back that she goes, no, I do the background checks for all new employees. And here's what it consists of. And I was expecting her to tell me social security background check, we do national criminal data background check, maybe a county background check on top of that, and maybe financial cross-reference. And her answer was that everybody's received a background check in the facility that supports this comprehensive security plan, and it was done through Google search. So she had just Googled that person's name in Google, and if she found something derogatory, she would flag it. But if she didn't find anything, they were good to go. And that kind of opened my eyes up a little bit, where they weren't willing to. It's not that they weren't willing; they just didn't know that you could pay like $15 a search. Some places as cheap as 10. That does at least a national criminal database check or a child predator or sexual conviction check. And they were just doing it on their own, and they assumed all this risk behind the doors. I mean, and it was like, for instance, the janitorial staff had complete and full access to any room in that entire facility. And even though they were doing these great exchange identification and key control, they didn't have a really good understanding of the person and the risk of that person. So I just bring that up as a story, something to learn from. And those are things that we could look at and explore when we do our assessments. It goes for cyber access. How are you checking people before you put them on your network? How does the break in the cybersecurity? I'm reading Aaron Clough's question. Let's see here. Not really a preparedness question, but my question is this: how does one break into the cybersecurity industry? I have a bachelor's in criminal science, or it might be communication science. I'm a little ignorant on the acronym, but all of my experience is in non-IT emergency management. There is some crossover between the field, but it seems that many HR departments expect already established experts for entry-level positions. It's extremely difficult to even get a call back, let alone an interview, unless I possess every industry certification and 10 years of experience in a language invented yesterday. Any help or advice and appreciation? Robert, can you help out in this one?
Yeah, so can you reread that question, Tommy?
Well, it's a long question. I think
Yeah.
what Aaron's asking is, with regards to cyber, what's the best way to get into the cybersecurity industry? What have you seen so far?
Well, and I think he's kind of right. To show that you have the certifications and the experience, those are the key things. And one of the things that CISA's been working with is there's been some organizations created within the state of Missouri. One of them's called the Missouri Cybersecurity Center of Excellence down in the Springfield area. This is a non-for-profit that was created. It's the co-founders are assistant professor at Drury and another business owner that started up this company to solve some problems, kind of, in this. They realized that, when students from their universities, their colleges within the area that offer degrees within cybersecurity or classes within cybersecurity, that those students, when they graduate, still have a hard time finding work because they don't have the experience. So they created this non-for-profit, and their goal, and keep in mind that this is now getting started. Their goal is to build out a security operations center and then start providing cyber services that students within the area colleges can come and work in to gain that experience, whether it's at a security operations center or performing pen testing. Talking to these two individuals, long term, they would like to, start some sort of intern program to place students out in industry to gain that experience. So their goal is when the students graduate that they'll have that required experience. So I know I probably didn't answer your question, but we do see that that problem out there in the industry, and I think there's some organizations being created to help solve that problem.
Either way, if anybody in the meeting right now has questions specifically on our slide presentation, our contact information is the second to last slide. By all means, feel free to just give us a call. We're here for you, whether it's for just industry questions, and we'll research that a little bit and get back to you, or if it's for services that need to be provided, or just discussion. I had a discussion the other day with a stakeholder for an engineer was asking the tensile strength, or what is the prescribed or guidance on stone being used as a anti-vehicle, like standoff distance barrier or obstacle. For those of you interested, there is no guidance on it, but you can get into the geological makeup and structure of certain stone on hardness, shear strength, etc. And based off those charts, you can come up with something that diamond, by the way, would be the strongest stone you could put in for barriers. But I don't think that would be worth it. But limestone and things such as that, or granite stone, would be more than ample. But we were able to help and facilitate that discussion and get them the answer they needed on their engineering project.
And if you
Well,
guys have any
Ashley?
questions, oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, we don't bite, we're pretty easygoing guys. And, we're all Missouri kids except for Chris.
And if you guys want to come off mute to ask your questions, if you're struggling with that, either type it into chat or raise your hand, and one of us will be happy to help you come off of mute. So yeah, come off mute, chat with us, talk with us, ask them questions, not me. I don't know the stuff they do.
As far as contact info goes, Robert, can you bring the slide up, the presentation? We'll just go to that slide and let them capture it through screenshot or just take a picture of it.
So are you not seeing the slide with the contact information? Because I'm still showing that I'm still sharing.
No, my stuff's delayed. It's embarrassing. We say we're from CISA, and then I have these delays on my computer, but I think it's more the network than the computer.
Robert, we were seeing your website.
Oh, okay. Well, I've stopped sharing, and I'm going to reshare.
Okay.
There's the PowerPoint.
All right, there you go. There we go. Yeah, if you can keep it right there. So if there's any questions or requests, you can also go through our region and the emails down there. And then for Central also, or if you have incidents that happen that you want to report or get some insight on, you can definitely go to our Central at CISA.dhs.gov, and they'll reach out to us 24/7.